The first spy to steal secrets from Los Alamos was Theodore Hall. He was codenamed Malad.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for some of history's lesser-known betrayals, which still had a huge impact.
Among the enemy's ranks, there's an agent working for the military genius, Karl Ludwig Schulmeister.
Number 10. James Armistead Lafayette. When you hear the name Lafayette, your first thought may be of the heroic French officer who fought in both the American and French Revolutionary Wars.
But I'll bet there's a name you don't know. Important, heroic, vital to the cause of freedom. His name was James. Over time, he was James Armistead Lafayette.
Instead, we're discussing an enslaved American from the same era who served under Lafayette. James was born a slave, but volunteered for the Continental Army, which promised him freedom.
Passing himself off as a waiter, he gathered significant information that included the number of ships and boats in and around the Hampton Roads area, including Yorktown.
They asked him to spy on British General Benedict Arnold, who thought he was just a runaway slave. This allowed him to do the job amazingly well. Thankfully, in 1784, he was granted his freedom for his heroism.
On January 9, 1786, James finally gained his freedom. One of his first acts was to add to his name that of the general who inspired him and pleaded for his freedom. James the slave became James Lafayette, an American hero of the Revolutionary War.
Number 9. Operation Trust. In the 1920s, the Soviet Union was a newly formed revolutionary state.
1 month after the Tsar's abdication, Lenin's special private train arrived in Petrograd to find the provisional government, the Soviets, and the revolutionary parties working together.
In 1917, they got their start in the Russian Constituent Assembly election. When Lenin's radical Bolsheviks lost, they destroyed democracy in favor of authoritarianism. Understandably, not everyone was pleased.
Less than a quarter of the population voted Bolshevik. And anyone who knew Lenin knew exactly what he would do. He let the Constituent Assembly meet, and then he closed it down a day later.
It never met again. That was one of the great blows against the move toward democracy in Russia.
This led to Operation Trust in the 1920s, a fake anti-Bolshevik organization created by the government. It was called the Monarchist Union of Central Russia, which was a front to capture monarchists. In 1993, historian John Costello was allowed to access Trust's records. Turned out it was a total mess, with no real way to tell who was a monarchist or not.
But he also imposed Tsarist-era tactics: secret police, press censorship, and state terror.
Number 8. The Zinoviev Letter. Britain between the two world wars was teeming with fresh political ideologies, from anarchy to communism to fascism.
As far as the opposition were concerned, there was only one issue at stake: Labour's ties to communist Russia. In short, the Red Menace.
Many were terrified of the communists revolting in Britain, much like they had in Russia. This fear was so great, in 1924, it cost the Labour Party the election. This was because of a published letter from the Soviets, which encouraged British communists to revolt.
A very secret letter of instruction from Moscow, which we publish below, discloses a great Bolshevik plot to paralyze the British Army and Navy and to plunge the country into civil war.
The right-wing conservatives published the letter, which later turned out to be forged. This would only be realized decades later, after the damage had been done. So, it turned out Britain wasn't at major risk of a communist uprising after all.
The individuals who forged the letter remain a mystery.
There are a whole series of people who could have done it. I could have done it.
Number 7. Hans-Joachim Tidka. Most people agree the worst person to turn into a spy is your own counterintelligence agent. This is exactly what happened in West Germany in the 1980s. For most of the 20th century, Germany was divided into East and West, respectively communist and capitalist. Espionage between the two was major, with over 150 West German spies being caught in the East in the 80s alone. Somehow, the West's counterintelligence officer Hans Tidka evaded capture. That ended up not being a concern for Tidka, who was a double agent. In 1985, he defected to the East entirely, which caused huge damage to the West's intelligence agency. Number 6. William Sebald. Originally born in the German Empire in 1899, Sebald immigrated to America following World War I. In 1939, he returned home to visit his mother, where he was pressured by the Gestapo to become a Nazi spy. He reported this to the Americans, then quickly became a double agent. Eventually, he'd be a major player in the Duquesne spy ring, a secret Nazi group. In 1941, Sebald had aided the FBI in identifying all its members. This then resulted in a monumental number of convictions. In total, 33 people were convicted, with their sentences lasting over 300 years combined. Number 5. Theodore Hall. For a brief period, the United States was the strongest nation globally by an overwhelming margin.
The Manhattan Project, supposedly the United States' best-kept secret.
This was following World War II, when they were the sole owners of atomic weapons. This dominance would have lasted longer if not for the efforts of Theodore Hall. He was the youngest physicist hired for the Manhattan Project.
Hall, it's also a case of ego. I mean, Hall is the youngest member of the Manhattan Project. And it's clear that he feels like he's pretty smart and he's getting to be with all these Nobel Prize winners and do this cool work, but he also worked for the Soviet Union.
As the war came to a close, he became worried at the thought of the USA being the sole atomic power. This was a concern of many physicists who worked on the project, with a few petitioning President Truman not to use it against Japanese people. Eventually, Hall gave the Soviets detailed plans for the atomic bomb.
They figured out that they're unable to get a clean case against Ted Hall. And as a result, he never goes to prison.
Number 4. Jean de Valois-Saint-Rémy. The French Revolution was an extremely complicated event, with a myriad of factors driving it. One such factor was a bizarre scandal involving a diamond necklace and Marie Antoinette. The Queen's reputation had taken huge hits by 1784, making many disinterested in the monarchy. Jean de Valois-Saint-Rémy made things even worse by tricking someone into thinking the Queen wanted a 2 million livre necklace. Jean then stole the jewelry and had it sold on the black market. The offenders were put on trial in a scramble to save face. It had the opposite effect, fueling more hatred of the monarchy. Jeanne was branded with a V for voleuse, or thief, then sentenced to life in prison. Number 3. Karl Schulmeister. The Napoleonic Wars were a period of immense turmoil in Europe, following the chaos of the French Revolution.
Napoleon's armies are taking over Europe. The German states armed themselves against the armies of the Revolution. But the French Emperor handily defeats both Prussia and Austria.
At its helm was Napoleon Bonaparte, whose head spymaster was the German Karl Schulmeister. Initially, he worked for the Austrian Empire, but became a double agent for the French Republic.
Documents that he put together can still be found in the French military archive. They include a detailed description of the Austrian army's deployment, personally addressed to the French Emperor.
Without him, Austerlitz wouldn't have been such an overwhelming victory for Napoleon. This was the famous battle that caused the Holy Roman Empire to be dissolved. This turned him into one of the most important spies of the era. Schulmeister was even sent to the British Isles to spy on France's greatest foe.
Schulmeister is an extraordinary godsend for all who want to show that he belonged to one side or the other. For in this way, he can be made into a hero.
Number 2. Harold Cole. The worst traitor of World War II is a huge claim to make, yet it's how Harold Cole has been described. Originally from London's East End, Cole started working for the Gestapo by 1941. His cover was that he was a British agent working to release POWs from Vichy France. In this job, he managed to get at least 150 French freedom fighters arrested. Many of them were executed and sent to concentration camps. Cole survived the war, but angered both the Axis and Allies. This got him shot by French police while resisting arrest in 1946, not long after the war had ended. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Wu Sangui. The Ming Dynasty was one of the longest-lived Chinese empires. They ruled from 1368 all the way until 1644.
The Ming Empire was crumbling. Even from the faraway Shanghai Pass, Wu Sangui could sense its imminent demise.
In the end, one sole traitor, Wu Sangui, was a major factor in their downfall. Wu was originally a Ming general, but decided to let their northern Manchu enemies through the Great Wall. This was because a peasant rebel had taken Beijing, capturing Wu's family in the process.
我父亲还好吧？吴老将军
The Manchus then descended on Beijing, but decided to start the Qing dynasty instead of restoring Ming. Wu didn't stay loyal to them either, eventually starting his own rebellion in 1673, which lasted 8 years and ended in defeat. Were there any huge betrayals we forgot to mention that you feel are barely known about? Leave them in the comments section below.
It was certainly compromised to a great extent by the actions of these individuals.